Good morning.
Morning.
All right. Any of you who know me, most of you do, you have to laugh at my jokes, okay? Welcome to our leadership forum. We're delighted that you're here this morning. This should really be a great day where we take what we've sort of done so far and develop a pretty progressive agenda for moving forward with the plan and all the things that are going on. We've got a wonderful group of people here today, which we'll be acknowledging through the program. But I'll get to the details a little bit later on. What I wanted to do, though, was to take a moment and introduce the County Executive, Jeff Kram, who has played a terrific, tremendous role in sort of spurring the coalition and making a lot of this happen. And we're thrilled that he could be with us this morning. And please, a warm welcome for Jeff Kram, the Broome County Executive.
Thank you, Patrick. And I'd like to either take the credit or the blame for Patrick being with county government and being with the coalition. It depends on which day of the week it is, I guess, whether it's credit or blame. But it's indeed an honor to be here this morning for this leadership forum. 8 years ago, Broome County was on its knees economically. We had the lowest or the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. We were dead last in New York State in job growth and economic development. Well, things changed. So by March, if you move forward to March of 2000, Broome County was #1 in New York State in job growth and economic development. And then something happened. It was the national recession, which particularly impacted the electronics industry, of which 40% of Broome County's manufacturing was electronics. So the worldwide slowdown in electronics had a big impact on Broome County. So we didn't just sit around. We formed the BC Plan, working together with the private sector, with the university, BCC, BOCES, everyone working together. And we've made significant progress, I think, with the BC Plan. We rebranded the community. We're now Greater Binghamton. Yesterday, the Board of Realtors changed their name. The Greater Binghamton Association of Realtors, is that it? Lois? Just want to make sure. Well, we strengthened our relationships with Binghamton University and with BCC and with BOCES and the private sector. And we marketed the region to a whole new host of people that never heard of Greater Binghamton before. We provided training grants to local companies, millions of dollars to local companies in training grants. We had a brownfield seminar at BCC with Senator Hillary Clinton. That resulted in a project that I think one of the first results of that project is a new press project that you see going up in Johnson City. Today we're bringing the community together, community leaders, and 9 distinguished panelists, 3 of which are up here now, to build on the momentum that we've created. My hope is that today we can generate an ambitious action plan that will guide us in the months and years to come. I want to thank each one of the panelists for participating in today's sessions, and I encourage everyone to participate actively. And on behalf of the Greater Binghamton Coalition, I want to thank you for looking forward, for being optimists, not pessimists, and wish you luck in the months and weeks and months and years to come. And I would like to stay with the session today, but unfortunately Mr. DiTilio and I have a meeting, the project that we're going to be working on, so Dick will be leaving in a few minutes. So we have some great news. Hopefully they'll be coming down the pike. A project that just came up yesterday that we've been working on for the last 6 months. So Dick and I are going to be leaving in a little while to have a meeting regarding that. So hopefully there'll be some good news coming in the next few weeks, next few months that involves Broome County, and I think it'll be real exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, very much. Appreciate having you here. Okay, we're going to get right into the panel. I want to introduce, is there anyone in this room who doesn't know this woman? Okay, then I wouldn't know. Candace Chapman joins us this morning from Channel 12 WBNG. She will be co-moderating with me, and we're thrilled that you could. We're going to be running around the room together, participating with the panelists and getting your input. We hope that we won't have anyone making speeches today, or this is not a day for long oratories. So we're hoping that we can keep our comments short and to the point and cover a wide range of material, because there's a lot of stuff that will come up today that hopefully we can use to develop this agenda for the future. I imagine that the conversation will start more general with larger trends and issues, and then as we get through the morning, we'll get into some specific action plans that perhaps we can take to work on some of the issues that get raised today. So that's really the plan. I'm going to get right into it, introduce our three distinguished panelists, left to right. You all probably know this person's work, Todd McAdam from the Press and Sun Bulletin. He is, in my view, and he doesn't always say good things about me, so this isn't sucking up, but he is, in my view, probably the best reporter on economic news and public affairs in all of upstate New York. He has covered the plan and the region for a number of years now, and there's a bunch of clips in your packet from him, and we're thrilled that you could join us this morning, Todd. In the middle is my Albany boss, Margaret Morey. Maggie is the Director of Workforce Development and Training for the New York State Department of Labor. She is responsible for about, what is it, $350 million in Workforce Investment Act funds that come from the federal government into New York State. She is a national expert on workforce policy, consulted with states across the country, and she's a really big supporter of what's going on here in Greater Binghamton. And then the last but certainly not least is Jean George, who is from Innovation Associates, that company that just won the designation as the Small Business of the Year for New York State. Can we give him a round of applause, please? Jean is, in my view, one of the most talented recruiters and human resource specialists in the Southern Tier. He has years of experience in this field, and someone we turn to regularly for advice, counsel, and support on what we need to do to address our human resource challenges. So what I'm going to do after that introduction is turn it over to Candace, and she's going to start asking some tough questions for these characters. Go ahead, Candace.
Well, let's begin. Well, I'll trade you. Well, let's begin with jobs, because that's one of the reasons that we're here, and that's the reason for the BC Action Plan, is to bring us more jobs, more growth, and more wealth in this community. The Comptroller came out with a report this year that said in 2002 to 2003, the Southern Tier region had the highest rate of job decline in New York State at 1.6%, Broome County being part of the Southern Tier region. The report also said that the job loss had slowed. It blamed a lot of it on manufacturing. But as we look at this plan right now, where are we at? Have we hit bottom, and are we ready to go up?
I'll take a crack at that. The Greater Binghamton area has been essentially in decline for 40 years. At one point, manufacturing accounted for 35 to 40% of the total economy. As of last month, it accounts for about 16%. So there's been a 50 or 60% decline in manufacturing. That is still how people in this community see what we do and what we are. It's how they identify the industry here, is by what we make. Clearly, that the economy is in flux. If you look at the growth area over the past month, it has been in healthcare and in business service. Manufacturing is still in decline. It lost 100 jobs year over year, according to the latest Department of Labor figures. Have we hit bottom? It depends on where you look. There certainly are areas in this economy that are growing. There are areas that are going to be in decline. And to me, the larger question isn't whether we've hit bottom, it is whether the workforce has the skill set and has, frankly, the desire to take the jobs that are going to come, or if they're going to go elsewhere to try to find jobs that better suit their skill set.
I would add to what Todd has said and say that I think one also needs to take a much broader look at economies and shifting economies. I work quite closely with my colleagues in our department at the Research and Statistics Division, and I'm always very skeptical of year snapshot data. It does not, it makes for good headlines, not necessarily for good trend lines. I would say that as a country, manufacturing has represented a large part of our employment base, and as a country, that is shifting. We are shifting from what we know as traditional economies into a world in which we're going to have new and different economies. I would echo Todd Todd's comments around where skills fit into this. And I would also say that it's very, very important for business leaders and for people setting agendas to know that the unemployment insurance rate does not define the labor shortage. That in fact, you really want to be looking at things like labor force participation rates, and you want to be looking at the employment rates as opposed to the unemployment rates. That doesn't mean that there isn't churning going on in the economy. That doesn't mean that there aren't issues that need to be teased out in how regions stabilize and grow. But some of those issues, I think, that were identified in the Comptroller's report also need to be trended against population data, the aging workforce in this area, and other issues which contribute to business decisions as to whether they stay and grow.
Gene, you want to take a crack at that?
Sure, love to. I have like a kind of a seat of the pants assessment because I'm out there every day and I'm trying to recruit people for our business that makes the pharmacy automation systems and software. We also have another business that does direct placement, contract placement, temp to direct. So I'm looking at resumes daily and I'm talking to people daily. Do I see I do see a gap as far as what needs are versus what skills are that does need to be addressed. I've been doing this for 10 years and I've seen slow, I've seen it pick up, I've seen it get slow again. Do I think that we've hit bottom? I think probably we have, and we're starting to make a turnaround. I'm optimistic about where the economy is going to go over the next 5 years. I think, you know, we're no different than any of the other areas. We may have had the lowest, may have had some very bad numbers here for the state, but every state of the union has experienced the same thing that we've experienced, and you know, I think this area is starting to turn it back around.
You talk about skills that are needed. You see a skills gap. Can you be more specific with this group and what you see that we need, skills that need to be developed in this area?
I'll give you one example. I've seen a decline in good mechanical design people, good mechanical engineering people. Our pharmacist system and some of the new things that we're going to be rolling out demand some very high skills in plastics, in automation, robotics. You know, truthfully, a lot of those folks have gone elsewhere. But happily, I can say we've got 3 or 4 people that we'll be talking to in the next couple of weeks. One from South Carolina, one out in Canandaigua. We even have a person up in Canada who is interested in coming down with a TN visa. So I see that particular area as a shortage. That's been the one that has kind of been that I've seen. And also too, highly skilled administrative people. I think there are a lot of them out there in this area, but I think they're kind of holding their hand and seeing what's out there. They have a good job. They're not too tempted to make a move. So I see it there. I see it in the mechanical side. Software side, I think we're still in a position where we have a lot of good programmers out there who may have been mainframe programmers, may have been programming in older languages. I think it's important that they make a transition, that they learn how to develop software and program on a Windows platform. When I go through software resumes, my head hurts because every day you see a resume with a new language, and I'm constantly looking it up and trying to see what it applies to. You've got C#, you've got C++, Visual C++, ASP, .NET. You look at those. It reminds me of when I was taking my accounting courses. You know, you'd read about 4 or 5 pages, and you have to get up and take a walk. But these are all the new languages that are coming out, and it's important that the people out there who maybe are not up on that, they got to ramp up on it and learn those things.
I would say, as part of a statewide initiative, many areas around the state are engaged in strategic planning around human resource issues and workforce issues, and clearly a challenge to the state's workforce, both emerging and current, is the lack of math and science skills, and these are foundation skills. This is not high-level functioning. I think it's, to echo what Jean has said as well, there are many individuals being promoted into supervisory titles who lack supervisory experience and supervisory skills. That doesn't mean they cannot succeed, but they are being promoted into something because of workforce shortages, and they do not have the proper supports in place to succeed in that. I think it is a challenge to the state, it's a challenge to all of us to strengthen and make that education and workforce connection, because to succeed in our state's economy, doesn't matter where we are in the state, it is becoming clear that a high school diploma is not even the minimum anymore. And so the ability to learn speaks volumes to an employer, much more so than just having a bunch of credentials on there. And so that lifelong learning is something that we're going to have to start embedding not only in our students, but in our adults as well.
One of the things you just said actually kind of strikes me as interesting. A high school diploma is not enough anymore. Greater Binghamton actually has a disproportionate number of people who have an associate's degree. In terms of advanced degrees or bachelor's degrees, it runs about the same ratio as any place else in the country. But about 17% of the residents of Broome County, or I should say Broome and Tioga counties, have an associate's degree or similar training, which I'd always understood to be more technical. It sounds great. These people are still complaining about not getting jobs. As near as I can understand, their training and their skills are sending them in one direction. The jobs that are out there, while Jean may be looking for mechanical engineers and design specialists and people with language abilities, I reviewed America's Job Bank last week to see what openings are actually in the community. There are 2,600 jobs available according to AJB right now. And presumably there are more out there that just aren't listed. Most of the openings are in healthcare. I shouldn't say most, but the largest category is in healthcare. An awful lot of them are calling for skills, some of them as simple as being able to change a bed or to vacuum a floor, very entry level. To get the good jobs in healthcare, you're looking at a bachelor's degree to be an RN. An MD would help. There's a shortage of psychiatrists. And certainly the technical training of an associate's degree for a lot of people is not going to give them the skills or the knowledge they need to get those jobs.
So what do you do about that?
I think that's your job, isn't it?
Well, as Patrick knows, because we've been spending some time with our colleagues from around the state, really parsing out a lot of the data. And what is clear from a lot of the data within New York State is that the success to both higher wages and better skills comes from on-the-job training. We have higher earnings outcomes when it's an on-the-job training model or a customized training model that is done on-site, where the course and the skill work is defined by the employer in a plan that's mapped out with the individual. That person succeeds faster and has higher wage growth than a person who goes through what we would know as traditional classroom-based training. So I think it's a challenge to a variety of us to say we have to look at the models and the templates that we approach skill training with and really see what works and what's successful. So to meet someone like Jean's needs, as well as to try and meet the healthcare needs, healthcare workforce needs that are out there, you will start seeing, I believe, a lot more what we refer to as OJT models, because it allows an employer to also assess the opportunity to help grow that person's career path much more so than you get out of a traditional classroom-based model. That's not the only thing. I would also say that in degree granting programs, there are lots and lots of issues as to what's relevant versus what coursework the person took. And I go back to something that I said where the foundation skills in the maths and the sciences are not there. And I probably have the math, but if I had to go back and do the biology and the chemistry right now and the physics, I can tell you that I would not come up on the radar screen in the kinds of jobs that are going to be available in the biotech, in the pharmaceuticals, in the in the infotech are going to require a different level of critical thinking skills. So it is evaluation. It's also making more real-time decisions. Community colleges, BOCES, often funded by public employment and training sources, created computer classes all over the place. And then all of a sudden we had more C++ graduates and more A+, and you name it, they were all out there, and the jobs weren't there. Well, that's how labor supply and demand works. So all of a sudden, you're not paying $80,000 anymore for a computer programmer because the supply chain all equaled out with the demand chain. So we have to do much more real-time modeling, and we also have to work much more closely with businesses to define what those needs are and align curriculum and training in real time with those needs.
If I could add something to Maggie, that the real time, you hit it right on the head. We're not in a position anymore where a bunch of us can get, at least I don't think, where a bunch of us can get together and say, hey, let's put a survey together and let's send this survey out to all the major businesses in Broome County. And well, by the way, how long is it going to take to get that survey out? Well, it's going to take us a few months to get that survey out. A lot of times, within 3 months, the total picture could change again. What was once a hot position is no longer a hot position. So I think that as a community, as a greater Binghamton region, if we want to find out some real-time data, it's got to be done quickly. It's got to be done fast. It may not be. It may not meet all. It may not meet a perfect process, but you got to get something out there, and you got to get some raw data and go with it as best as you can.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. We'll come back to that because that's a big topic. But I wanted to get back to something you were talking about, Todd, in terms of the region and in terms of our sort of perceptions of ourselves. We've lost a lot of population in this region in the past, some odd years. One of the things that strikes me is I'm thinking about how this may be a trend that America has sort of faced, in lots of different ways historically. This idea that people from the Northeast shifted south and shifted west, and it's happened not just in New York, but all through the Northeast. And I was talking with Maggie last night about Nicholas Lehman's The Great Migration, all the African Americans that came north, in the 40s and 50s. And I don't want to go on and on, but the question, I guess, is, is this something that we can deal with? Because it seems like there's still a lot of consternation about that, and I'm not really sure we can do much about the fact that we've experienced this huge demographic shift to the south and the west, and we still remain the third largest economy in the country in New York. So how do you think about that, panel?
It's kind of a vague question, Patrick. You want to rephrase it?
I get vague questions from you all the time, Todd.
Well,
would you like me to rephrase it? I think what I'm trying to suggest is there something we can do? Can we wave a wand to get over what has happened to New York State in terms of these out-migrations south and west? Because it just seems to me like, as I said, it's one of those demographic things that has happened historically in this country that it's really, we need to try to do everything we can to bring people back, but to bring people back in the numbers that were there originally is really going to be a tough challenge, isn't it?
Well, the paradigm I always look at when I look at not just Binghamton's economy, but the Northeast, is the Civil War. Absolutely devastated the South. The South, in fact, did rebuild. It took them 110 years. The Northeast has a better advantage. Sherman did not march to Watertown. We have an infrastructure that does exist that did not exist in the South, and we don't need air conditioning. We also have a major brownfields problem. It's endemic to the Northeast. Any place that built factories before 1950 or so is going to have these issues. Sometimes it's going to be contamination. Sometimes it's just a site with an ugly building on it. Who knows? Those are all things that need to be overcome before you can really look at major growth in the Northeast. These are things that the South and the West did not have to overcome. So those are challenges. After that, can they be brought back? Property values are low. People, at least in this community, work typically for about 3/4 the national median salary, by job sector. The skill sets are here. I mentioned earlier the number of people who have a post-high school education does exceed the national average. This area is also aging faster than much of the rest of the nation. While average age is going up everywhere, it's going up faster here. So at some point or another, this community is just going to be too old to draw, to draw the companies here who are looking for long-term permanent workers. How do you deal with that? That's frankly, I'm here to find those issues. If somebody can give me a coherent solution, I'll write a story about it tomorrow.
I'm just looking at some population statistics as well, and looking at the civilian workforce statistic changes in the New York State population, and it is a real challenge. But I think it also requires us to think a lot differently about how our nation looks and how our communities look. And I say this with all due respect. I'm looking out at an audience that looks an awful lot like me. And the truth is, that's not what our nation is going to look like 5 years from now, and it's not what it's going to look like 10 years from now, and in many communities across the country, it doesn't look like this now. And I realize that's also not what the Broome-Tioga region looks like, but we have got to do a much better job of tapping into the labor pools that are there and incentivizing them with many of the opportunities that exist in regions like this. I know that the governor of Iowa several years ago caused an immense firestorm by suggesting that he wanted to open his borders to immigrants, legal or otherwise, because Iowa was losing population at a much faster rate than almost any other state in the nation, and businesses were picking up and leaving by virtue of that. I have challenged some of my colleagues to really, around the state, to think about what we do about tapping into the immigration pool that's coming into the greater metropolitan New York area. New York State remains, even post 9/11, a major immigrant destination. It's true, the immigrants are coming with different skill sets, not necessarily all it's not any different than some of the immigration waves that happened in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. But that means our communities have to have the cultural institutions, we have to have the education opportunities, and we have to respect cultural differences to embrace those kinds of things. We remain a major net out-migration state. So as much as we are still pulling in people from all over the world, they come here, the data indicates they stay 2 to 3 years, and then they start progressively moving west. But the interesting thing is, they're not moving to California. In many instances, they're stopping in the Midwest. There is nothing in the Midwest that is not here in the Broome-Tioga area, and we have to figure out some strategies to let those folks know that you're here, that their opportunities are here, and then they can raise their families and be an active part of the community in the Broome-Tioga region.
Gene?
I was listening to Todd and some of the challenges that he listed, and we really do have some challenges here. And everyone in this room is going to have to work very hard to change things around. Do I think that the powers that be in this region get it? I do. I do believe that. If you asked me that 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But I think that it's becoming more and more obvious to people that we do need to do things differently. I think we are doing some things differently. I know the folks out here in economic development, they're visiting a lot more trade shows. They're hitting the trade shows. They're talking to the site selectors. They realize that this is a marketing job. Really, when it comes right down to it, we're all salespeople. And the big key is to sell this region. I think there's some unbelievable things and unbelievable sales benefits to our region that will bring people in. I guess I'm optimistic. I remember 15 or 16 years ago reading article after article after article about how Japan was going to bury us economically. And here we are, third largest economy in the country, right? New York State, around there. Here we are as a country. We're still here. We're still plugging away. It is going to be tough. There's going to have to be a mind shift, not just in the people that make decisions, but all the way down to a mother and father, not scaring their children, but making them do their homework, making them learn their math, making them, raising that goal higher. It's going to be a long, long process to get people to realize where we are right now. But I think we're going in the right direction, and we're getting there.
When we talk about people working for companies long term, a lot of people have a very vague concept of what long term is anymore, especially when you see companies starting and then shutting down and jobs moving to other places or even outsourcing to overseas. The one thing, and you know how much of a challenge it is, we've heard that small business is going to be the backbone of growth in this community. And we even heard the president say at the Republican National Convention that small business growth is going to be some of the backbone of regrowing our economy in the United States. But it's tough. And are we training people, and are we really getting people to look towards the kind of skills that you need to start a small business, to be successful? When somebody loses a job and they say, well, I want to start a small business, where do they go? Or do we have enough resources out there for that?
One of the issues to deal with is just noticing that there is such a thing as a small business. This community has been a company town, and largely a one-company town, for more than a century. Endicott Johnson at its peak employed 25,000 people, and in a community of 200,000, that's a one-horse town. IBM at its peak had 16 or 17,000 before it declined. Now, in the economy right now, the largest private employer, I believe, is Lockheed Martin with about 3,800, which is still a fairly large company for a community of this size. What we're going to see in the future is we're not going to see a 10,000 person employer. We're not going to see a 20,000 person employer. You're entitled to your opinion as to whether having one would even be a good thing for this community, because as they generate, not only their own jobs but support jobs, be it the guy who takes your ticket at the movie theater to a subcontractor. When that company declines, and companies do grow and decline, all the support goes with them. So one of the issues that I see is a lot of the workforce wants to see a 10,000 job employer come to town, or at least grow in town. That's not going to happen. So frankly, retraining is going to have to happen to show people not just the skill sets they want or the ability to work for a number of employers through a career, but just the acknowledgement that there's no longer going to be one dominant employer in a metro area of 250,000 people. There are going to be 10 or 100 larger employers and thousands of smaller ones.
I hear two different issues when I hear your question. One, to echo something that I think I heard Todd saying, is it's a very difficult transition for individuals to go from working from large firms to smaller firms. And our workforce system, I think, has not done a very good job in helping skill those people and helping them make the adjustment. Often it's not about skill sets, but working in smaller companies means you wear multiple hats, means the internal structures are totally different. You take on totally different responsibilities, where in a larger organization you might never have ventured into that domain. So in some of the transition issues for people who are going to work at smaller firms from larger companies, we have a lot of work to do on how to help people manage that transition and manage that change. On the other end of it, I think you asked, are there sufficient resources, and do we have the skills to help people initiate and grow small businesses? And I don't think it's often recognized that, in fact, it is a skill. Entrepreneurship is a skill. Not everyone is born with it. I do not believe we do a good job at fostering entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of the data points you back to the K through 12 having to inculcate taking risk and that kind of entrepreneurship mindset very early on. I can't speak for how Gene started his business, but not everybody's a risk taker. Not everybody wants to put their capital on the line. Some people want to go and work for people who are the risk takers. So I think there's a body of research, and there's also some learning that we can do to foster small business initiation and growth. And out of virtually every recession that this country has had, it is small business that leads the way. And I think a lot of the work of Dr. Michael Porter out of Harvard will tell you that those are often the indicators that you look to see when recessions are ending. And what has kept our country ahead of the Japans and the Germanys is that innovation, that ability to do entrepreneurship. So I think we have work to do in fostering the issues around what really is required for a small business, and all of the managerial things that go along with bringing your idea or your product to market. And I also think we have work to do with the individuals who need to help make that transition and going to work from a larger firm to a smaller firm.
First off, I want to just let everybody know that I didn't start Innovation Associates. I'm not the owner. I want to make sure that I have a job when I get back this morning.
I just elevated you in title.
Well, I appreciate it, Maggie, I do. My wife will tell you that I'm not an entrepreneur. I could see that as far as entrepreneurship goes, I believe that training and making a person as business savvy as they can is extremely important. However, looking at the founder of Innovation Associates, Harry Boyer, he has this indescribable fire in his belly to succeed and to make it happen. I don't know if you can teach that. I think if you have an individual like that who wants to start a business, they have that fire, they have that desire, you can teach that person anything. You could teach them how to do a budget. You could teach them how to manage a business, plan for a business. If the fire in the belly is not there, it won't happen. If the atmosphere is where they're taxed into the stratosphere, they're not going to succeed. If there's no incentive in the area or in the state for these people to succeed, they will not succeed, no matter how many training programs you throw at them, seminars you give them. We have to be business friendly to allow people like this, like Harry Boyer and other entrepreneurs in this area to succeed. I know that 5 or 6 years ago, we were fighting like crazy to get our first big account. We were on the ropes, so to speak. It was tight. It was tight, and Harry and the engineers, they stuck to it. They got it out, and now when people out in the pharmacy world talk about automation, we're the first name that comes up, and I think that while the training is important, we've just got to be as business friendly as we can here to make people like that succeed. That
fire in the belly that you just mentioned is kind of interesting. I was talking to Richard Florida a couple of years ago. He's an economist based in Pittsburgh, and his theoretical research is at the heart of the BC plan that we're supposed to be following. And he had told me, and he reflects this in the book he wrote, The Rise of the Creative Class, about what got him interested in the topic. Is he was talking to a kid, about where he wanted to go. Now he's in Pittsburgh, which is a fine industrial town. The kid wanted to go to Austin. Why? Because it was cool. That got him to taking a look at the history of the two communities. Austin was an up-and-coming community, a lot of smaller businesses. A lot of them were tech-oriented, but not all. But they were smaller companies that were innovative. Pittsburgh was built exactly the same way about 80 years earlier. Think Carnegie. These were risk takers. They were gutsy entrepreneurs. They built major companies, won gad loads of money. And then when they died off, they were replaced by increasingly rigid managers, people who were less willing to take a risk with major companies, and they became essentially managers and executives and caretakers of a company rather than gamblers and people who were willing to lose it all at the risk of becoming successful. The story of Pittsburgh sounds an awful lot like the story of Binghamton, Endicott, Johnson, Watson, Donna Hearn. They were all major risk takers. They all took a chance, and they all made it work. Now, what history does not show us is how many of those people who took a gamble and succeeded, how many took a gamble and failed? And I think that's one of the issues that this community faces now. 4 out of 5 small businesses fail in the first several years, regardless of the sector they're in. Frankly, the next Tom Watson could be sitting in this room right now. He could be out on the street right now, hoping for pocket change to get downtown. We don't know. And frankly, any number of people sitting in this room could be, the next 4 out of 5 failures. That's just the tough part of the nature of the economy, and it is a risky thing to say this is where our success lies. It lies with taking these chances, knowing that 4 times out of 5 they're going to fail.
I think there's also there's a lot of trends out there where we talk about small businesses and we may have a template in our head as to what that means, whether it's a hairdresser or a restaurant. But I think one of the things that seems to be moving in a direction is that there's a lot more interfirm cooperation going on, even among small businesses, that the need to be competitive and the need to get access to new markets and to new technologies really requires a lot more cooperation even among competitors, because there's no way to achieve and attain economies of scale in real terms without doing that. And so how you harness some of that talent and some of that fire in the belly with some of those other things to advance the ball is really some of the strategic planning that you might want to be thinking around, because you're going to have failures, but for all the failures you may also have the successes. And the key that some would argue is to be keeping that research and development one step ahead of where everybody else is. So fostering and rewarding investment in research and development in the long run appears to pay off.
Okay. We've got about 15 minutes to go in this segment. Want to open it up to the group. Anyone want to jump right in with some comments, or are you thinking about what you might say? Because we'll run over with our microphone and you can address a question or make a statement or jump up and down, do whatever you want to do. Any volunteers? Well, while we're thinking about that, I want to ask the panel, are there any things that you wanted to make sure you brought up this morning that you haven't been able to touch on yet for whatever reason? Gene?
I guess the one thing that I've thought the most about is that, again, I go back to the fact that we're all in a marketing, this is a marketing challenge in many respects, to sell this area to folks, to people who want to bring a business in, to someone that just graduated from, I don't know, USC that's considering coming here. We have to take a look at what our positive attributes are, and there are a lot of them. Great educational systems, great secondary schools, a beautiful, I think a beautiful area to look at, except when it's raining or
the entire month of July.
You drive up and down that strip on the Vestal Parkway. There's a million places you could stop if you want to have something to eat. There's fine restaurants. There's places to shop. I think we have a lot of the infrastructure right here, right now, to sell this area. And it's not everybody is going to want to come here. But you know what? If you're a salesman, if you're selling pharmaceuticals, you can't sell every doctor that you go to. It's a numbers game. You have to realize that you make 20 sales calls, you get 5 people who may be interested, and maybe you close 2 deals. It's the same thing here. It's going to be it's volume. It's talking to as many prospective businesses as we can. It's talking to as many prospective young people to bring them back into the area. And it's all our responsibility when we talk to people to know our area, to know what's great about it, and to emphasize why they should be coming here. I think that's a huge thing. I think that's a mindset that we all have to adopt. People, and not just in this room. I've around the water cooler, you hear all the time, "Oh my God, it's raining again," or "Oh my God, this, oh my God, that." you know, it's fine, and it's funny sometimes, and gallows humor is funny, but, you know, we have to be upbeat. We got a lot here to sell, and, you know, the quicker we get out there and do it, the better off we'll be.
I've got a comment back here. State your name.
Lois Andrasik. I'm a realtor with the Greater Binghamton Association of Realtors. There, I said it. Thank you. I have a comment on brownfields. Unfortunately, the people in this area only see bad news, brownfields, brownfields, brownfields. But I don't believe they're fully educated. I think they really don't know what it means. And I would like to see more done. Perhaps maybe TV, you know, series, bringing up different points, or maybe a newspaper articles, 3 or 4 series on that. And whatever they read, it's bad news, and I don't think they really know all that can be done or how it could be fixed. It's not good news, I understand that, but there are ways. You know, God knows He's given us plenty of them, and we've been blessed. But there are solutions, and I don't think they know the solutions, and I think they should be fully informed because of all that is around here. And thank you for being here. This is very good.
One of the issues that this community faces in looking at brownfields is, yes, residents don't know, you know, what the issues are with the brownfields. Frankly, nobody in this community knows what the issues are with brownfields. There are 80 major and hundreds of minor brownfields in the community that have never been assessed to see whether there is in fact any kind of contamination, or if there is any kind of contamination or pollution, what it would take to clean it up. I believe it was last year Senator Hillary Clinton came to town with a brownfields conference. I know Ken was there and you know, had looked at it. There are areas, there are brownfields that are being redeveloped, but most of them, nobody has any idea. And it's a little difficult to tell, you know, 200,000 people that there's either an opportunity or a danger when the fact just has not been established. Now, there's work being done to get those sites assessed to see what, if anything, needs to be done to make them viable for redevelopment. But the work isn't completed yet. So at the moment, there's not really a heck of a lot that can be told to the residents. It's still, the processes are still going on to find out what needs to be done.
Yep. Lois, bless you for asking about brownfields. Gene was the only one on the panel that talked about the importance of incentives and being business friendly. Innovation Associates, despite all the bad things we hear about disincentives existing throughout New York State, is here and it's staying here, and hopefully it'll stay here for a long time. I'd be interested to know from Gene and perhaps from others what he thinks are some of the most significant disincentives that the state needs to work on, or that perhaps the county needs to work on, and what do you think you know, some of the major incentives are that exist that contributed toward Innovation Associates coming here and staying here?
First of all, so everybody knows, Innovation Associates is located in one of the economic development zones. You know, we're very, very grateful for the benefits that we reaped from being in a zone. It's been a very, very, very good program for us and very helpful. I don't have a great answer for you. You know, I do think that, again, we all know what the tax rates are. We're heavily taxed. We've got to find ways to ease that. Business people shouldn't be penalized, especially small business people, shouldn't be penalized for working hard. Where is the incentive in working hard when you know that you're going to, you know, get the you-know-what taxed out of you? I don't have a great plan. I just know that you know, people will live in this state and they'll move their business across the border into Pennsylvania because it's more friendly, and you know, things of that nature, they need to be fixed.
I was talking to an economist about the same issue. Actually, I talk with economists about that issue all the time. I'm not a business owner. I'm not a business person. So I take his word for what's important to people when they have a business. And he gave to me a list of priorities that any business looks at. First is having a workforce ability to make the product or deliver the service that your company does. The second is the ability to get that product or service to your customer. And the third is the cost of business. Some of it is taxation, as Gene mentions. Some of it is perhaps the cost of the capital acquisition of properties and equipment. Some of it's utility rates. Again, I'm not a business owner. Many of you are. You tell me what your costs are. It would seem logical to me to address those concerns, address them in the priority that they are to businesses. Make sure there's a good workforce capable of doing what the business wants. Now, different businesses require different skill sets, so that requires a workforce development system that can address either the key skill sets that are required or more generally just make sure that there are good workers out there. An ability to deliver the product, sometimes that's rail, sometimes that's highway, an awful lot of times it's a T1 line, because we're dealing in information. Then the cost of business. That has been an issue in this community as long as I've been here. That's 16 years. I imagine it is an issue in every community. But as the economists I talked with pointed out, San Francisco is one of the most expensive places in America to do business, and it was booming through most of the 1990s. That is one element. It can be balanced by making sure the other elements of locating and developing a business more than offset it.
I think the programs and the services that I oversee are targeted to individuals to then help businesses. My observation has been that in many of the government ideas around special populations or targeted employee groups, business has not been responsive, and that's more likely because that does not meet their immediate need. Those kinds of incentives sound good, but the truth is a business is in business to make money. They're not in this as a social service. So some of the mindset really is a paradigm shift on how we develop the right human capital incentives to keep businesses in place, to retain them, to grow them. On the other hand, I think we also need some very critical evaluation on what works. It's clear that incentives work, but what are their long-term benefits to the communities that are underwriting the costs of those incentives? And I would add to the list that Todd stipulated, and it goes to the San Francisco point, most businesses, if they are relocating, are looking at quality of life issues. They are not, their management is not going to put somebody in a school system that is not of a standard that they want. So there are some of those nebulous issues out there that you're not going to incentivize somebody with, but are something worth promoting. One of the things I think we don't talk about enough, especially in our upstate communities and counties, is that we have very solid K through 12 systems. And one of the incentives, I think, that we can work on in an immediate term, and it's not a cash incentive, is we have a responsibility to get into the K through 12 system and make the emerging workforce aware of what jobs and opportunities exist in the area. Educators are there to educate, and I'm not talking about job shadowing days. I'm really talking about a true understanding of what goes on in that plant or in that company, in that facility, because the reason that youth will move to Austin because it's cool is because they have no idea that they might be able to do the cool work right in their own backyard. So the incentives, whether they're targeted to special populations, they have an immediate impact, but the long-term impact for the individual has not been clearly demonstrated through the programs that I tend to oversee.
I have a question from Andrea back here.
Good morning. As a supervisor of the town of Vestal, a municipality that taxes, I'm very aware of that comment about taxation. But as a former teacher, retired teacher, I'm very aware, too, of the needs for education and the issues that you also brought up, Maggie, just now. And that is really a crux, I think, of a problem in New York State. Municipalities such as the town of Vestal, we really have a relatively low tax rate. When we look at our tax rate is well below the county's tax rate. for our municipality. We're on partial assessment, so that the understanding of that is difficult, but we never went to full val. So when I say we have a tax rate of $88 $1,000, we're talking about the average home being under $6,000 in the town of Vestal as assessment. The county's is $132, but the school system is $420 $1,000. That's not to say there's something wrong with the school system, but the problem is that across the southern tier where we have excellent schools, we have to find a different way, and in New York State, of allowing our schools to grow, but not putting the full burden on property taxes. There has to be a shift, and if Albany doesn't understand this, that there has to be a shift in the way school taxes are set out and schools are funded, then we're always going to be at a loss, because the problem of taxation is tied intricately with the ability to give our kids good education. But it falls on the property tax people, and it does not fall on the general public over the whole range. And we don't have anything set up to change that right now, but we need to.
I would have a lot of history in that area, actually with Patrick. We go back quite a while in some of our early tenure with the State Senate Education Committee.
Careful, Maggie.
I know. We could probably do an entire session on that, on who's responsible for funding education and how best that responsibility is shared. I will say that Governor Pataki built on some of the ideas that he and his colleagues had developed in the State Senate when they started the STAR program. But for many of us who were in the trenches as that program came to be, and when I say in the trenches, we had batted around many a model on what one does about school taxation, and we clearly knew that if you didn't figure out a way to manage the spending side of it, merely shifting the burden to a different taxation source was not going to solve the problem. I do think a healthy statewide discussion on academic infrastructure, administrative infrastructure, core foundational instructional costs could be of value to everyone. I do think, especially in New York, as I happen to be one of 12 children, and I have siblings all over the country, so de facto, I get a lot of information about the education systems all over and the taxation methodologies. We love school districts in this state. We have over 700 school districts. And that's not the way it's done in a lot of states. And I'm not here to say we need to collapse school districts. I live in Coxsackie, Athens. They're still getting over the merger from the 60s. And I think there's a whopping 8,000 people that live in the two towns. But I am saying a discussion can't start with the taxes until we come to a core set of values and a discussion as to what it is that the taxpayer and the general citizenry needs to invest in, because the only other revenue sources are business taxes and personal income taxes. You know, there's no magic bullet in terms of taxation. With that said, I think from a business strategic point of view, what all of us need to keep in mind, and I think Todd mentioned this earlier, we are shifting as a nation to a service economy. And in many of our communities, we wholly relied on major employers to underwrite the costs of our public systems, whether they be local government, state government, or the school systems. And as those employers that took up lots of area and you know, used lots of electricity, et cetera, shifted out, our entire public infrastructure systems were left very vulnerable. And if we shift to small businesses, to technology-based businesses, to people that can work from their homes, the revenues that are going to be needed to keep the infrastructure in place may not be there. And I think a whole meeting could be dedicated to what is it a community wants to value, and how does a community want a region, because this is about the Greater Binghamton Coalition, how does a region move forward on a commitment to education and a commitment to pay for it, and coming up with a community solution.
In sort of a larger picture here, I've been working on the same basic theory ever since the creation of the BC plan. Is that Greater Binghamton is at a point where it needs to decide what it wants to be when it grows up. At this point, I've interviewed, you know, through a variety of different ways, hundreds of people, and have asked the same basic question. Primarily, they still want manufacturing. They're probably not going to get it, but that's what they want. That's how they identify their community. And they are going to push for an education system and for a government system that allows for that to happen. Is that right? Is that wrong? That depends on what you want. But that is what they want, and they want the government and the infrastructure to make that happen.
Well, I think what we'll do, if it's okay, is give these guys a round of applause, please. Now we're going to take about a 30-second stretch break. Nobody leave, please, because it's going to continue to be interesting here. We're going to get our next panel up there. We'll begin in about 1.3 minutes. Okay? Thanks. All right, here we are. Our second distinguished group of panelists. They really bear no introduction, but we're going to introduce them anyway because it's a source of fun for us. Left to right, we all know Mark Newman. Mark and his company, Newman Development, have invested more than $350 million in the region in the last 15 years. He is a major force behind the Greater Binghamton Coalition, a terrific advocate for the community, and has really been responsible for bringing a lot of investment to various parts of town, and he'll talk more about that later on. President DeFleur, president of Binghamton University for how many, about 11 years, 12 years?
Feels like
She has engineered tremendous growth in the university and its reputation, known nationally in all kinds of surveys as a fantastic place to go to school. She is driving the university's contributions to the area's economic development, and we're thrilled that you could be here with us. Oh, one more point about President DeFleur. Nobody knows this about her, but she's a big David Letterman fan.
Oh, God.
And I was going to ask her to read last night's top 10, but that'd be putting you on the spot. Sorry about that. And of course, on the right, Chairman Dan Schofield, Broome County Legislature. He also works for IBM, another major advocate for the coalition and for economic development in the region. He's been a force for all kinds of positive change in the community, and someone we look forward to hearing to today. So can we have a round of applause for these folks, please? Candace, you're on.
Lois, a more pointed question to you to begin with. For the longest time, at least since I've been here, Binghamton University was sort of seen as that campus over there that brought in all these kids from out of town, and they filled State Street on the weekends, but we didn't really know necessarily what Binghamton University was doing for our community. But there are a lot of exciting changes that are going on, especially when we talk about, we were talking about with the last panel, research and development. And perhaps people want to know a little bit more about what Binghamton University is doing over there that's leading the way to that. But the second point to perhaps, and going off of that, is just because we research it and we develop here and we grow it here, can it be built here?
Well, I'm glad you started with the easy questions. You know, the mission of the university is instruction, research, and outreach. And we work hard in all three of these areas to first of all, deliver the best possible education we can in the fields and in the schools, which we have. And we've been recognized for that. In terms of the research and scholarship, we have tried over the decades to develop specializations that are tied to and grow out of the emphases in this area, in the high technology. And so certainly the IEEC in our Watson School of Engineering is a prime example of, and many other programs they have there, of the partnerships that we have. And we have worked hard to, it's not just we do some basic research, and I think you're right that there is a long process from taking basic research to the more applied stage and then to the commercialization. But I think more importantly, much of the research that we have done and we're increasing in scope are tied to the practical problems that many of the industries, such as EIT, have. We have put together a team, a true partnership, and a true, really cooperative arrangement where we have faculty and students working side by side with EIT researchers in a building over at their site. And it benefits, it's a win-win for all of us. It enables them to really move their knowledge and their technology to the cutting edge. It gives our faculty and staff invaluable experience. And so we are doing things in a daily, more applied way. We also do basic research because in the fields we're concentrating on, we want to advance the frontiers of knowledge. And the most exciting development that we're undertaking at the present time, which we're very grateful that Governor Pataki has allocated funds to help us, is the High Technology Commercialization Center. And Bhagat Samakia is the director of this center, and he has pulled together not only technical knowledge and expertise and cutting-edge research from this area, but throughout central New York, from RPI and other colleges and universities. And what we're trying to do is to speed the process from the more basic innovations to the marketplace. And so that will take a period of time. But I think the most important points that I'd like to make is that we are very committed to working in the areas that are of the greatest need and are the specializations, both the existing ones and the new ones that we're trying to develop in this area. For example, bioengineering, we have a whole new department, a very well-known instructor and researcher there, and he is forming ties with a lot of the firms in this area. And then finally, I guess I'd just like to mention that we've really stepped up our process of technology transfer. It does take a long time, but we have had a dramatic increase in the patents filed by our faculty, and we are working with them. Some of them already have some ties with, funders, with people who want to invest in it, in their discoveries, and in the process of manufacturing. And so we're excited about some of that. I think it's a challenge for all of us. Once we get to the stage of when something is going to actually be developed, I don't want to say manufactured, but produced, to try to convince people that they can do it here, they can get the space they need. I think most importantly, we need to ensure, can they get the workforce they need? And that is a really, it's a challenge for this area. And can we recruit people from outside of the area to come here? And I think that Binghamton University, Broome Community College, can really play an important role in this. Particularly, we can help with educating the workforce, trying through internships to help improve them and keep them here, and more importantly, to have ongoing retraining, workforce, help. And I think that is very crucial, and it's one of the central things that Binghamton and Broome Community College do, and we do it very well. I think we're very fortunate to have two of the highest quality institutions, both in SUNY and anywhere, right here in this area, and it's a big competitive advantage for us.
Mark Newman, can you talk a little bit about the current projects that you've got going on, and secondly, your commitment to the community and some of the things that you're working on related to that?
The two major projects that we've been involved in over the past Is that better? Two major projects that we've been involved in over the past couple of years, primarily the last couple of years being the Vestal Plaza project, the redevelopment of that, which of course is the university housing project that we have. And that project is a large project. There'll be approximately 198 units that'll house 728 students approximately. There'll be state-of-the-art suites. It will be, there'll be 4 stories, basically 4-story buildings, and there'll be, where the old Ames was in the center, there'll be loft-type living in there as well, so it'll be kind of unique. But essentially what's going to happen to that plaza, it's going to just be a totally, have a totally different look. It'll be we'll be taking it into the century from the 1950s vintage. I think it was built in the late 50s. And with the retail that we developed in Vestal, and actually once the Oakdale Mall came in, that vintage of shopping centers just couldn't exist. So something had to be done with it. And we looked at the retail component, and Ames was in there for a while, but it really wasn't a great situation. So I think what's going on there is we're just adapting to the times. And we're sort of capitalizing on a little bit about what Lois was talking about. The university is a great asset here, so capitalize on the assets that we have. And that's one of the major things. And really how, just briefly, how the whole concept of the housing came about at the Vestal Plaza was I was in Delaware visiting. I was with a friend whose daughter was going to the University of Delaware. I was down there, saw this great new apartment, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 4 bedroom suites, all with their own showers and kitchens, and it was just quite amazing. Study rooms and gym, workout areas and so on. So at that point, it became a concept. Right now, it's a reality. So I think, and I've always said, we are in a position in this community to create from within. And I think there's a lot here. And I've heard some different viewpoints today, and I respect everybody's viewpoint, but I think there's a lot more positive that can be done, and there's multi-million-dollar projects that are happening right here. For example, Gannett. And we talked, there was a question raised earlier about brownfields and awareness of brownfields. Well, I think, frankly, awareness of brownfields comes from someone that wants to pursue brownfields and wants to understand brownfields. Every one of our projects in Vestal, or most of all of our development projects in Vestal, I'm not talking redevelopment, have been brownfields. Town Square Mall site, brownfield. Target Center, brownfield. Shops at Vestal, brownfield. Meatball Factory, the old Ozolid facility, Town Square Mall with the asphalt plant and so on. So we've taken properties. So brownfields have been around for a long time. It's just how you handle it and how you address it. And when we're talking brownfields today, we're just taking it to a different level because we're talking about more involvement from the state, and we're talking about potential incentives and so on. So, but I think that there is so much within. If you look at things that aren't here and what's needed here, and you can say, let's pursue it. And I don't mean just Newman development, I mean as a community as a whole, there's so much opportunity. It's staring us right in the face.
Dan, everybody looks to you, the lawmakers, and they say, you need to stop asking us for more money from our pockets so that we have the money to pursue some things and to make some things happen. Does this community have to sit down and have a real serious conversation about what to cut or let go of in order to make other things grow?
Absolutely. Todd had made a comment earlier about when Binghamton grows up, they got to decide what they want to be, and that's a very true statement. What's Binghamton or Greater Binghamton's right size? Are we always going to be a 200,000 person community, or can we grow from there? And if we did grow from there to 300 or 400,000, can we handle it? Do we have the right infrastructure? Are we really positioned to succeed? That answer is no. And I was talking to Pat a couple of months ago, and I said, you know, the way I view this is we as a community are moving in 3 stages. Stage 1 is unconsciously incompetent. Stage 2 is consciously incompetent. And stage 3 is consciously competent. You know, 40 years ago when we had, you know, the wealth of what the big corporations deliver to this community, we were fat, dumb, and happy. We didn't have to worry about all this stuff because we just couldn't handle what we had. We were really unconsciously incompetent as far as this topic goes. We move now to a consciously incompetent state. We recognize through this Angelou report and all of the data mining that we do that we got a lot of issues, and we've got to get them on paper, and we have to develop a plan, an action plan, assign owners, find the money, and go fix it to move to that final stage of consciously competent. We've got too much government in this community. This community is a small 200,000 person community that it's really kind of embarrassing to say I need 145 elected lawmakers to make this place run. I got about $500 million worth of total appropriations and about 4,000 employees. That's really not that big. I don't need a county executive, 19 legislators, 16 supervisors, 8 mayors, 73 councilmen, and 28 trustees. That's absolutely not necessary, in my opinion. So until those lawmakers get at a table and say across the board, what's the right size, how do we want to look when we grow up, and how can we manage what we collect in property taxes, and municipal tax is not as big as school tax, but that's not my bag. Let the school folks figure out how to handle that thing. I can only control the local, municipal, and county picture. We collect $100 million collectively in property taxes, and we spend $60 million of that on public safety alone. You got police chiefs all over the board, whether they're working now or not working. This is an opportune time to take a look at that thing and say, hey, how do we form something that works better than it works today? So that's what I've signed up to do, and that's our role as community leaders, is to figure out a better way to deliver this service.
Mark, I want to go back to the development that you've put into this community. You know, you have done a lot with the Parkway, new retail development, and the other projects that you're working on now. And yet some critics will say, well, those are only retail jobs. Those aren't really sustaining jobs. How do you respond to that and the role that retail and some of the development that you have brought in plays in the economy and in the future of this community?
Well, for starters, I would tell those people to go talk to all the people that built those buildings. They were able to work in this community. The dollars that were generated, the sales tax revenues, employed a lot of people. We have over 500 people that have been hired to work at the Vestal Plaza. Gannett's hired. They're putting out a $50 million contract for construction in Johnson City on a site that looked like it could be a prison before it was cleaned up. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just retail jobs. If you look at it globally, those goods are being manufactured. You have truck drivers that are bringing them to the stores. It's way beyond. So the people that say they're just retail jobs, well, in my view, they're just very small-minded. And I mean that. I think that the retail stores and the sales tax that's been generated, we had a $120 million outflow prior to Town Square Mall being built. Those dollars have been recaptured. And if those people don't think for a minute that those dollars are being pumped back into our school systems, they have another thing coming to them. And it's creating programs for our children. It's creating jobs within the schools. It just goes on and on and on.
And I guess, is the retail component important we talk about trying to attract people to the area? Is that something people look at?
John O'Neill from Lourdes Hospital told me, and he said I could use this quote anytime I wanted to, that he would not have moved here if it was not for the retail on the Vestal Parkway. And I've heard it from many other people as well.
Lois, can you talk a little bit about your strategic plan and just give us a summary of where you think all of this is going? Because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
So you mean I have to summarize a year's work by very thoughtful people in like 1 minute, Pat.
Yes.
Could I give you a top 10 list?
I have one for you.
I know. Well, let me just begin by saying that when I arrived, the university had done targeted planning, but had not done overall comprehensive planning. And so we began that, and we have had 2 formal plans for the future. And if you go back and look at those, there, I would say, maybe 80% or more we accomplished there. We had broad goals, and then we developed specific objectives. And we really had, we accomplished a tremendous amount. Over the decade, the environment around us and in higher education has changed dramatically. And so it was really crucial that we again look at our future, at least 5, maybe 8 years, and say, given who we are now, given the environment both in this area and in the U.S. and for higher education, what is it we need to pursue? And so we looked at issues in terms of our size and our complexity. Binghamton is a very young university. In terms of a doctoral research university, it really is rather narrow. And since I've been here in the previous plan, we've added a number of degrees, a number of doctoral levels, a number of fields. So we're looking to the future, which I think is important for us and for the area, to add some more academic fields, perhaps even schools and colleges, and just areas that make sense. We looked at what makes sense. We're not going to do like a med school. That doesn't make sense for I think for anyone. It's such a challenge. But we looked at areas that make sense vis-a-vis who we are and where we are. So it talks a lot about our future in terms of our size, complexity, the kinds of fields we want to pursue. It also talks about what's the next stage, you might say, of development for Binghamton as a young university, and we talked a lot about our research and how we do that, how we garner more funds, particularly from whether it's private, government, or foundations to conduct this research. And we talk a lot about how a lot of the new knowledge and the fields are at the borders of fields before, like material science, like the bioengineering, and there are others. And so what we're trying to do is to organize our faculty and our research to take advantage of these interstitial fields, and at the same time do some strategic hiring. Early this morning I had a meeting with our faculty senate, and one of the things that I gave them and announced to them, which will be public soon, it's probably public now if I say it here, but is a major faculty hiring initiative, and I mean a major one. And I have figured out a way to carve out some money from our budget and over the next 3 years. This is the only way that we are going to be able to grow and develop in every way, both in size, intellectually, in terms of outreach, whatever we want to do. So, and then, as you probably read with the brief coverage of it in the Press and Sun Bulletin, it also talks about outreach, it talks about technology transfer, and we have tried to enhance our outreach and our partnerships with the community. We have enormous partnerships with the community, which is important for us and for the area. I mean, it goes the full gamut from not-for-profits, the school district, the industry, every single facet of life. So we talk about that outreach and engagement function and how in some ways we will strengthen that. So I think that's enough, Patrick.
That was terrific. Thank you. I think you made news today. That's great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lois.
Chairman Schofield.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your perceptions of how the economy is changing, both in the region and nationally? I know you've got a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, somebody mentioned before about long-term employment with a company, and I got to be careful because Diana Benz is over here, and I don't want to talk as an IBMer, or speak on behalf of IBM. But I'm a third-generation IBMer, and I don't think you're going to find many folks that are going to be third-generation company in the future. It's a changing environment, and I don't even think companies want it. So it's different. So when you get young folks, I recruit at a number of universities across the state, and I recruit for accountants. It's hard to get them here. It's hard to tell them what Greater Binghamton is all about, and then when we get them here, the first thing they want to do is find the next job with a company somewhere else where it's sunny and they got a lot of nicer quality of life things that would keep them interested. So we're kind of falling down on the professional retention category miserably. You know, it's a different world. If we're going to put all of our eggs in the manufacturing basket, I don't think we're going to make it. I mean, as far as small systems go, I think that's important. You know, not just IBM, but lots of companies do a lot of offshoring, and that's a bad thing today, but that's not what's going to hurt us. That really has very little to do with what's going on. And practically speaking, if you run a business, and you can hire an accountant in this area for around $40,000, and you can hire one in India or China for $5,000. How do you not do that? So there's going to be a balance. The experts will tell you in 2012 to 2015 that we're going to be importing more jobs again because we just don't have enough skilled labor to fill what we're going to have to offer. Companies in the last, my perspective in the last 20 years, have really done an excellent job managing expense. I don't think they've grown the revenue to their expectations, so they've done a great job managing expense. If that trend continues in the next 20 years, the expense items left to manage are going to be buildings and rents and heat and overhead and NOCI and all that kind of stuff. So with that coupled with a mobile workforce, you're not going to get companies to build a big building on a hill, bring 4,000 workers in and say, here you go, there's your economic development. So we've got to find that mobile workforce that's going to want to come to Greater Binghamton and live here, and we have to develop the things that are going to make them want to come and live here. We've got a population pool of 50 million people that can get to Binghamton within 7 hours in a car. So we've got to, that's our market area, I think, and they're used to this Northeast region. How do we get them to live here and work here, buy a house here for $150,000 or $200,000 instead of Westchester County or Boston or Toronto for $500,000. So we've got lots of opportunity. We just got to get our act together to go out and do that.
Lois, what do they want? When we talk about Binghamton University students and we say, we'd like to keep them here, why can't we keep them here? Why can't we keep more of them here? And then on the other hand, the students say, well, you're not very welcoming to us. I think there's some mixed messages there. What's going on?
Well, the first thing they want, these are very smart, creative, talented, ambitious young people. And they want good career opportunities. That's the bottom line. That is the bottom line for them. And there are companies who have retained people from other areas who were at the university to stay here. And they basically did it through the internships and, you know, treating them well and persuading them that there is not just the first job, but there's a career ladder. I mean, our students are looking not just at that first job, but they're looking at their career. They, you know, perhaps some of our students who come from the metropolitan area would find that this is, you know, not as exciting an area as they would like. But you'd be surprised. A number of them find that life is so easy, manageable, and there are opportunities. And more importantly, we recruit students not just from the city. We reflect the whole state. Proportionately, our students come from all over. They come from other states, and we have an increasing number of international students. So while I would say the quality of life and what to do beyond the bars would be important, but at the same time, the most important thing is the employment.
Mark, I was just talking with Doug Kamen a few minutes ago, who's the president of Southern Tier Young Professionals, and he asked me to ask you guys to give a report card on the coalition and the implementation of the plan. Now, this is kind of a personal issue for me, so I want you to be careful. But I do think it'd be good for you to give us an assessment of that, but also try to help us figure out what we need to do as a community to continue advancing this forward, because honestly, I don't want it to be entirely resting on me, if you know what I mean. Go ahead.
Boy, glad he picked you, Mark.
Yeah, I am too.
No, I think the coalition is a great step to move it to another level, but we've got, you know, our work cut out for us, clearly. And, you know, Patrick's been doing an awesome job. I'm not just saying that because I like you, but no, Patrick's done a very good job. But we're knocking on doors, and, you know, you can just, that's what this business is all about. The development business, every business is about knocking on doors, and we've got a tough battle, and make no mistake about it, it's not easy. You know, it's hard to win the war when you know, your ammunition's taken away. We had empire zones that are being eliminated. Patrick and I were on the phone 2 weeks ago with Senator Schumer. We're trying to set up a meeting with Senator Schumer. We're trying to get more attention here from a federal standpoint to get some dollars in this community for particular projects. You know, I just spent 3 days down in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. We have an office in Philadelphia, and I attended a conference, and I was just reviewing some of the incentives that Pennsylvania is doing. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's absolutely incredible. And we can talk all day long till we're blue in the face about retention of students and keeping them here in jobs. And, you know, Lois is exactly right. They're looking for careers. We can get it here, but we need money. We also need to establish, and I've said it for a long time, and this is one of my personal goals, and I've been talking to Patrick about it, and we need to establish some kind of fund for economic marketing / development, because you cannot market on a shoestring, period. End of story. And if anybody thinks for a minute that we're going to go out and promote this community with no money, they've got another thing coming to them, because our company spends a fortune on marketing. And for this community to go out and do it, it's not happening. So if you think we're dead on arrival, we're going to remain there, because it is not happening. That's one of the objectives and one of the goals of this coalition. We need to establish these dollars, and somehow we're going to do it. But when you look at Pennsylvania, you look at Keystone Opportunity Zones. We're eliminating ours, they're increasing theirs. I don't understand it. I mean, they have projects all over in Reading, Pennsylvania, in areas similar to Binghamton. Downtown redevelopments are happening. Scranton, Pennsylvania, you know, you look down there, their demographic profile is almost identical to ours, but they have, it looks like a city. I mean, sure they have problems, but it's happening. They're getting money. They're getting infrastructure money for highways. And unfortunately, you know, for whatever reason, we may have, how many people did you say within 7 hours?
50 million.
50 million people, but we're sort of like the bullseye of, like, no one wants to participate in helping in Binghamton. We're just sort of like an island. And that's, you know, so anyway, getting back to the coalition, it's not going to happen overnight. We knew it when we got involved with it. We know what we have to do. We know about the plan that was done for this area, but it's not something that's simple, and there's no immediate answer. But we've got to get people to start taking a hard look. We really, truly do, And that's all the way to the governor, to the senator, to whatever, because that's what's going to bring this area back. This is a great area. We have, right now, our demographics are pretty stable. Our population, we got to keep it that way, and we got to build on it.
Could you address, and perhaps all of you might be able to address this, one of the things with this coalition and one of the bigger things that came out of it that people notice in the community right away is the change to this term, Greater Binghamton. And yet there are a lot of people who have been here for a long time and they feel a sense of community loss and identity loss if we move to the shift of Greater Binghamton and marketing as Greater Binghamton. Can you address that and the importance of it, or why it's important to do it this way?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'll tell you, we argued at the legislature for 2 months on renaming the airport Greater Binghamton Airport. You just got to put your swords down. I mean, the community is going to have to get together and say, for the sake of survival, we live in Greater Binghamton. And that's, these steps of these renamings is helpful. And the more we see that, I know Action News had started very early with Greater Binghamton newscasting. It's very important. At our level, we'll try to promote it as much as we can, but it's essential to get, in the school systems. And I know that's part of the problem with consolidation discussions is, I want to wear orange and black or green and gold or blue and gold, and it's a tough hurdle to get over. You talk about library consolidations, it's like you're going to pick it up and move it to another community, and that's just not going to happen. So there's this high emotional, very parochial viewpoint of that we have to get past, a very conservative area, and it's going to be difficult. I just want to dovetail a bit on what Mark had said earlier about the money. We've been fortunate, and it has not been a political thing, but from the governor to our national senators, right on down, everybody has been, I think, as helpful as they could be based on the funds available to dole out what they can. A few years ago, I took a trip with some community leaders, business leaders and government leaders, and we went to Savannah, Georgia to do a benchmark on how their economic development agency worked. And it was a successful trip, and we learned a lot of information that helped us begin to build a model here in Broome County. They were very similar with 40 or 50 different economic development agencies like we have here to try to roll them all up into one agency that would take the lead. We're still struggling because we've got things like the Town and Union Economic Development Group, the City of Binghamton, and a variety of others that still want to have a handle on economic development. But the main ingredient, I believe, that got Savannah over the hump was they went to the public on a referendum and said, look, we got to save ourselves, and the only way we're going to do that is to cough up some money to go out and tell everybody how great we are and why they ought to be down here. And they voted on a referendum to put a 1% increase on their sales tax on the ballot, and the community voted for it. Now, that money didn't go to the government guys. That went right to the economic development folks to use that. They're a similar size community with a similar type market area with surrounding counties that all kind of went to the same place to shop. That one penny raised $20 million a year. In over 20 years, they were able to build the curbside appeal you need to bring corporations in. And the buildings and companies that we saw are nothing but a success. And you will see in the next 20 years Savannah being a tremendous growth area for folks to go to because they are now positioned to succeed. And they did it very methodically and went back to the community every year. And every year that was renewable to say, if you don't think we're doing a good job building you a county-wide sewage treatment facility, if you don't think we're doing a good job building county-wide water systems that are good and pure, or solid waste solutions and so on, then vote no. But if you think we're doing okay, we're going to keep that penny and put it in our community and make this thing work. I'll tell you, I was impressed, and we came back when we did the tobacco securitization and talked about taking that $50 million and throwing it right into this fund, and we didn't have enough time to put it together, so we used it to reduce debt. But it's going to take something like that, I think, to get us on the right track.
We have a few minutes to go in this segment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address
Patrick, I have one more comment. And Patrick's working on getting Binghamton on the USA Today weather map. Because it has, seriously, it has Scranton, Elmira, Syracuse. We need
Well,
recognition.
I have to say, if you watch the Weather Channel all the time like I do, because I'm addicted as a pilot to it, Binghamton is always on there, and we're very fortunate to have one of the few remaining National Weather Service full stations here. So at least we're, now, I guess not everyone watches that as much as I do.
I watch it a lot, too.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I appreciate having this put together. My name is Craig Pritz. I'm the superintendent of schools at Deposit Schools, and we are in Broome County. Half of us are. The other half's Delaware County, but it's all my district. A couple of things I'd like to point out is that the schools are indeed working on efficiency. It was brought out that the government needs to look at it and schools need to look at it. In my school district, we share transportation with a neighboring district. We share sports teams with a neighboring district. We have absorbed teachers while maintaining class sizes through attrition. And we also make use of distance learning to offer more opportunities. My small district has 16 college credit courses. That's a partnership with higher learning that we think is valuable and important. And I know that my colleagues throughout the region do the same thing. However, I think another advantage we would have is if businesses would partner with us. We've talked about retraining. We have a regional retraining center in our Bosizak Ed Center. Adults use that facility to retool themselves for new careers. I think we should encourage that. I think we also have a regional-wide training opportunity if businesses were to partner, and government were to partner with schools, and that is the Regional Distance Learning Network that's in place. It would be very easy, for example, for the county legislature to hold a meeting at one center and have two other regional sites and avoid the travel, and enable people to reach out, enable businesses to train from a broader area and pull in those people who need jobs and pull them in from a broader range. I think if we look more regionally at the entire district, whether it's on the Tioga side or the Delaware side or the northern side, I believe that we should do that. And I guess I would ask the business side and the government side, I know that the higher learning side does take advantage of that. I would ask the government side and the business side how you think you can partner with the schools more frequently and how we can help you.
Well, I guess we could. It's an avenue we didn't go down, but it's certainly something we can look at in the future. Yeah, I don't have a better answer for you. I think it's something we can put on as an action item and look to move forward.
I think, let me just address that a little bit. We have taken a lot of steps to partner with both BOCES and BCC the past several years. There's a lot more to do, and the distance learning piece is certainly a critical aspect of that. We'll follow up on that. It's a good idea. Anybody else in the group? To the panel, we've got about 4 or 5 more minutes. Is there anything that you wanted to make sure that you brought up today that you haven't brought up?
Well, Candace asked me about commercializing research. And one of the critical elements, besides the ideas and getting them to a very specific commercial state, is the venture capital part. And the Greater Binghamton Coalition actually has had over time a lot of discussion about that necessary component and how we really get some venture capital organizations going here, or who at least will, look at this area and be a part of it. And certainly that's another important component, I think, to overall moving forward, diversifying the economy, trying to bring a variety of new kinds of industry and jobs to this area.
Mark, you're flipping through your paper. Anything you wanted to mention?
No, I think I've, you know, I mean, just to kind of reiterate, it's just that, you know, the coalition, just so everybody understands, one of the things, many of the things we're trying to do is, as Lois said, establish try to get investors, but one of the things that we're also working on is trying to get government to understand, in order to do what you're talking about, we need help from them as well. And you know, that's a real tall order. And we've got a serious tax situation in this community. And if we don't start changing it, there's not going to be a lot of people building homes here. And the numbers are just, they're just staggering. I mean, my brother lives outside of Philadelphia. We were comparing tax notes yesterday. I asked him, and it's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing what they're paying and what we're paying. It's just unbelievable to me. My school tax bill went up 11.6%, and that was last year, and then the year before, and the year before, and the year before. We just, you know, if we don't watch ourselves, we're going to put ourselves out of business. These are some of the things the coalition that we're trying to do, we're trying to work on, and there's people that say to us all the time, well, what kind of progress did you make? What happened in the last year? What'd you do? Well, you know, it's really not that easy. So our goal as a group with, you know, many people that are, you know, involved and have made it, have given up, you know, personal time to be on this coalition is for the betterment of this community. And that's our objective, is somehow, some way, to find a way to make it better and bring it back.
Patrick, I'd just like to add one thing, that all of us are in this together. In order for the university to be vibrant and to grow and to prosper, we have to have vibrant, prospering area. And so we all have so much at stake, whether it's government, whether it's the, you know, private sector, it's the public sector. And I think it's important that we get together and we talk about our future directions, our needs, and that we plan actions. But the important point is that all of us understand that it's only, I think, if the university can do some things, we are not the savior. We have certain skills and functions and roles, and we are very committed to helping in those appropriate ways. Government has roles, the private sector, but it's only by understanding those roles and really working together that I think we can really have a bright future.
I just reiterate about the government cooperation. It's frustrating. I've been in local government for 22 years now, and I've been in IBM for about 23 years, and to see the changes that you know, that company has made as far as centralizations and consolidations and the way they change business to survive is remarkable compared to no progress on the government side. So until those government leaders get to a table and make some agreements on how to reshape and fit into this greater Binghamton model, we're just going to keep battling with each other over boundaries, whether it's rivers or border lines or county lines, and until we self-destruct. So that's an area we have to do a lot better at.
Well, none of you stuck to the script very well today, but I do want to...
Patrick, what script?
I just want to thank each of you for being here today, and also for your commitment to working on all of this. And I also think that it's important to emphasize that the President is right. We do need to work together on this and continue talking and communicating. So let's give these guys a warm round of applause. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back for our last panel, which will be outstanding as the other two have been. Then we're going to have a nice lunch. You'll be out of here by a little after 12:30 or so. So please don't go anywhere. Take a stretch break, and we'll be back. We'll be back at 10:40 Eastern Time.
Oh boy. Is this thing on? Yeah, it is.
Our last panel are three very distinguished and interesting people who will help us with a lot of the same kinds of issues, but perhaps in a slightly different way. From left to right, Sarah Dieste Miller is the, well, one of the leading arts culture reporters for the Press and Sun Bulletin. She's a little modest, so she's going to laugh up there at me. But you've all read Sarah's work in the press. She really has what I think is a unique handle on what's going on in the arts and cultural community in the region. And we're delighted you could be here today, Sarah. In the middle is Jim Kuhn, who is the superintendent of the Union Endicott School District. And the schools have taken a little bit of a beating this morning, Jim, but you're still here, and that's good. And we're thrilled you could join us. You have been, I would say, you know, without question, one of the great advocates of all the things that we're talking about today in terms of strengthening the connections between schools and businesses. And we look forward to hearing your comments about that and other things today. And then finally, one and only Marty Sauerbrey from the Tioga County Chamber of Commerce. Marty is one of the leading chamber executives in the state. She has done a tremendous amount of work in Owego, marketing Owego, marketing businesses in Owego, and she is very good at towing the delicate line between Greater Binghamton and Tioga County and all of the stuff that goes along with that. But Marty, we're thrilled you could join us today, and we look forward to hearing from you too. So as we've done so far, let me turn it over to Candace.
Thanks, Patrick. When people talk about trying to retain younger people here, people to stay here, one of the obstacles that you hear from some people is that they don't feel like that there's enough to offer here, entertainment, culturally wise. But when you look at 2 movie theaters, a bar practically on every corner, hockey, baseball, an opera house, a playhouse, restaurants, and there have been, you know, more and more restaurants opening. What is it that we're lacking, or what is it that people don't see here culturally?
Sarah, that's yours.
Yeah, thanks. Well, this is, there is a multitude of things to do here. I mean, I'm so busy, it's ridiculous, and in fact, I can't even cover all of the things that fall under my, my beat. But I think part of the problem is it's not, you have a lot of younger people, they only want to do a certain type of thing all the time. Like, they only want to go to rock concerts. Well, we have rock concerts, but we don't have them continually or on a steady basis, although the Magic City Music Hall is kind of making a dent in that area. But I think that's pretty much what the problem is. We had a while ago, one of the interns at the press wrote an article about, you know, there was nothing to do in Binghamton, and there is. If you're willing to go to an opera and you're willing to go to a symphony, and I think part of it is the marketing on the part of these organizations, if it were geared more toward younger people to get them going. I mean, the Philharmonic's been doing really well. They've sold out just about every show last year. I think there was one show that they still had 5 tickets left to sell. But other than that, they sold them all out. So, and I'm seeing a lot more younger people at a lot of these things. And I think that's the key, is to, or part of the key at least, is to get younger people so they want to do these other kinds of things that they might not otherwise look into. But to, you know, say, yeah, there is a lot to do here.
Sarah, I'm having an NPR moment here. Can you tell us what Magic City is for those of us that are
Yes, Magic City
old?
Music Hall is the former Touch of Texas, and it's making my life insane. They have basically a band per week, and they're fairly substantial bands, and it's run by Stu Green of Magic City Productions and Dave Armstrong of Creative Entertainment. So they just had 38 Special there 2 days ago, and they have David Sanborn coming. I mean, and they're all over the place. They've got Charlie Daniels Band coming in, David Sanborn, Rat Dog, which was here for the Binghamton Summer Music Festival. So that's what they're doing. So.
I'd like to add something too. Sarah's absolutely right. There's a lot of things going on here, and I think it's comical when people say there's nothing to do. Well, they need to get off their butt and get out and get involved in the community, because there's a great deal of things to do. Open the Good Times. Those businesses that have new employees, take them by the hand them the Good Times magazine and have them read it. There's more activities to do for young people of all different arts and culture. And maybe it's up to business to take those new people in the area, those new employees, those young professionals who we as parents have entertained all of their lives, get them out there and get them involved in the community. And that's how they're going to be successful, and they aren't going to be bored.
I wanted to thank you for asking a question we could handle. Unlike the one you threw to President DeFleur, this one's a little bit easier to handle. Let me just maybe give you a matter of perspective. As a person who is a superintendent in Ripley, New York, which is a grape farming community, the first entrance into New York on the Thruway, then moving to Fredonia, about 2,100 kids, and then my kids coming to this area, they are in heaven. They are just simply loving this area with the opportunities they have. And I think that probably when kids in the high school level say that they don't have something to do, I think what they're really saying is they've not connected to something of their interest. Because I know I only have one child in school, and I'm run ragged. If I were just to give you my schedule from the time I'm leaving tonight through tomorrow evening with all the activities that we're involved in just with one daughter, I know that there's plenty of things to do. And this area does have tremendous assets. Being, again, a superintendent able to move back to this area, this is my home area, I moved here with intentionality. I came back home to an area that I'm very proud of because I had a great upbringing here in this area. And if there's any one message that maybe we need to talk about here is we're really hearing a debate, in my opinion, on the quality of life. And I had a high quality of life experience in this area. That's why I came back. And if we can provide that for our children, that's the greatest seed that we can plant, and that's what the schools are doing day in and day out, trying to provide that quality of life because they want to return to this area to raise children, to be here, and to take advantage of our assets. And many of the parents that I see moving into the Union Endicott area and many of the districts in this area are people that have been in other areas of the country, seen other areas of the country, and again have moved back here with intentionality to raise their children. And I hear that quite a bit more than I hear I'm leaving the area because there's not an opportunity. So it is a great area. There is a lot of things to do. And I think when kids say that, they're just simply not connected to the one thing they wish they were connected to, or maybe they're not connected to anything.
I don't know if I should say this in this room, but if anybody remembers Facing Our Future, and this was something of a similar vein and similar goal, you know, almost 10 years ago, a little less than that. And I was looking through some of that formal material and news stories that we had done on that, and one thing that the Facing Our Future identified is that we needed to do a better idea of marketing this area towards tourism. Have we done a better job, and is that really a viable part of this action plan?
Be careful, Lou Santoni's in the back of the room over here, so watch what you say.
I'm going to speak to it from the western, whatever area. I think tourism is very important. I'm going to speak, I know more about Tioga County, so let me just say, we are not a tourism destination, but we know that when parents come in to Binghamton University, to Cornell, to Elmira, they're passing through the area. And after some study, we have found that we need to, if we can get them to stop, they are sold on the beauty of the river, the beauty of the area. And so they may not come to spend their family vacations, but when they come and take their kids to school and drop them off there, they are going to spend time. We have certainly been doing that in Tioga County. I can't speak for Broome, but I think as a region, we can certainly market ourselves as a place to stop along the way.
If I may just respond to that in terms of tourism, I think many of you realize that over the past couple of years there's been many statewide things or activities that have happened within our schools. I know that a couple of years ago the state track meet was here, the girls' state soccer tournament is here, the boys' baseball tournament is here, Destination Imagination, Olympics of the Mind, all statewide competitions. And as you look at the schools and you look at economic development, we take that very seriously. When our athletic directors bring these things to our areas, we are filling our hotels. we are filling our restaurants. And as they walk into our particular stadiums or in our auditoriums, we're handing them certificates saying, by the way, why don't you go out on Washington Avenue? Why don't you go over to the Vestal Parkway? Here's some places that you can eat. And as we bring these tourists into the area, I had an interesting story. My athletic director just told me 2 days ago that 2 families who came here as for a track meet were so impressed with some of our facilities, they've now moved here to this area, one in our district, one in the Vestal area. So they were so impressed with what they saw when they came here, and not only that, the way they were treated, the way that we talked about our community, the way we spoke about our community, and that's very, very important. So we look upon the tourism and bringing people into our community as an active way to support the businesses in this area.
Yeah, I don't know what's being done as far as tourism, but I know that there's plenty that we can promote as an area, not the least of which is the thriving art scene that's just kind of sprung up even within the last couple of years. I mean, when I started this job reporting on arts and entertainment about 4 years ago now, there were, we do a guide to the Southern Tier where we list everything, all the art galleries, and there were about 5 art galleries then, and I think there are about 20 now. And a lot of them are focused in downtown Binghamton, and I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go to the First Fridays, but they're enormous. I mean, the crowds are bigger every time. I actually had a chance to talk to a concert promoter who was doing a show here, and after they finished loading in the set, they went downtown. And he said he was from Ithaca, and he said to me, he's like, what's going on? You know, there were tons of people down there, and I'm like, well, when did you go? And he told me the day, and I'm like, well, that was First Friday. That was the gallery night downtown. And he said he'd never seen anything like it in Binghamton. He's like, what's going on here? So I definitely think that's something that could be promoted. So I don't know what's being done about it, because I don't do that, but.
Mr. Santoni would like to address some of this.
A couple things. I'll touch on the arts community first of all. My name is Lou Santoni. I'm the director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau of the Chamber. Regarding the arts community, the art galleries, we're embarking on a campaign in the New York City area in conjunction with them. Very successful so far. Referring to what Jim was talking about, these different sporting groups that are coming to town, that's not by happenstance. We started a program about 7 or 8 years ago. We recognized the importance, and I think we've been very successful. The Empire State Games brought in over 15,000 people. So we are marketing. A lot of it was a result of the program that you were referring to, Candace, and we're going to continue this. But as others spoke about earlier, you need dollars to do it also. We've got a full-time staff that's out promoting the community, and we're going to continue to do so, but again, you need dollars.
Just to pick up on what Lou was talking about in terms of the New York City piece, these guys placed an ad in this gallery guide, which is distributed to most of New York City. It's focused on New York City gallery guides, and Binghamton has an ad in that publication promoting the galleries in Binghamton, which is a huge step, and it was a collaborative effort, and kudos to you for pulling that together. But these are some of the kind of things that are going on. I should also mention that a bunch of folks, the County Arts Council, the IDA, the Coalition, partnered up to produce a brochure, a mailing to, I think it's about 55,000 middle upper income folks in the northeastern United States, to invite them to come to Binghamton in October for all of the stuff that's going on with the Prague exhibit at the Roberson and lots of other things. So there are a number of those kinds of initiatives that are out there that are really, I think, making a difference. And I didn't want to make a speech, but I thought I'd just add that. So, Dr. Kuhn, let me ask you, can you talk a little bit more about your perceptions of where these business-school partnerships might go?
There are many school partnership relationships, and one of the things I'm pleased about this conference, again, is the quality of the partnerships, because you're bringing everyone together. But we do have a lot of school-to-career initiatives in which students are going out into our communities and participating in shadowing experiences, in which businesses are coming in and talking to our children in the classroom, in which we are looking and do have quality internship programs. Just one perspective, Project Lead the Way. I happened to sit on a conference last year in which a young man at the beginning of the year was doing his presentation on a project on a new innovation, and what it was an earplug you put in your ear, and in the morning when the alarm goes off, it doesn't wake up your spouse or someone else because it vibrates in your ear. And he was explaining the design of this particular new innovation, and the engineers were in the audience just really blasting away with excellent questions, and they were talking a language I didn't understand, but he answered every one of them, and they walked out there with their heads saying, why didn't we think about that? You know? And then he developed that project and presented it at the end of the year, and the room was packed when he did that. That's Project Lead the Way with Lockheed Martin in engineering, and a lot of the medical strands that some of our schools have with internship programs at Lourdes Hospitals in Wilson, in which kids are going through a 4-year course of study in medical or medicine. And again, the whole idea is, even as talking to Dr. Bajwa quite frequently, who's part of our foundation, and we're beginning to expand our program at Union Endicott and offering that as a medical strand, where kids will have to do certain things for 4 years, and in their senior year they'll actually spend a half a day with a doctor next to them when they're doing brain surgery. Matter of fact, one of our students this past summer says, Dr. Kuhn, I need to tell you I even got blood on me. And I said, well, geez, I'm not exactly excited about that, but he was, because he wants to be a doctor. Those are the types of partnerships that are strong, and obviously one of the seeds we're planting is this is a good place to live, it's a good place to come back to, and we want those quality partnerships in all walks of life. BOCES does a wonderful job. Many of our BOCES students, by the time they're seniors, are part of a required work experience program. You may remember back in the days of Como and Lundin when they were contemplating requiring all students to go through a required work experience program in order to graduate, and then the new higher standards in New York came into play. And that's really what all these higher standards are about, is stronger partnerships with the business community to prepare them for the globally competitive society in which our kids are going to compete. And having said that, we don't know what types of jobs there's going to be out there. We have to prepare these kids to think analytically, logically, and creatively. That's what the higher standards are all about. And we know that right now, if our kids do not get a college education, a college degree, we know that they may not be a good wage-earning income in the future. And we also know that the smallest pool of labor force kids are in our schools today. As us baby boomers begin to retire over the next 10, well, we've already begun to retire, but on the other hand, we're going to be doing that for the next 12 years. The smallest workforce ever in the United States is coming our way. And so therefore, there's a great deal of emphasis on no child left behind and other aspects. We won't get into the pros and cons of that right now. But those partnerships are extremely important because that's what we're preparing the kids for in the future.
Dr. Kuhn, there's currently a study going on right now that all the school districts have ponied up for to study the idea of consolidating school districts. Mm-hmm. Is that a real and viable opportunity in this area, especially as people talk about the burden of property taxes?
I think that Mr. Pritz had kind of touched a little bit upon that. Anytime that the school districts can look at efficiencies of economy of scales, we have always done that as a natural course of business. BOCES is all about sharing services and driving down costs. That's what it's all about, because at BOCES, if you don't have two districts willing to play, you don't have a shared service. And therefore, BOCES is a shared service. There's basically 3 layers to this particular study. I really can't comment as to where it's going to go because I really don't know. One is, can we increase sharing services among school districts? Layer number 2 is, can some districts consolidate? And then layer number 3, which is kind of a unique look, is what does it look like if we have a county-wide system or a BOCES-wide system? And as someone mentioned earlier, New York State is very, very different than other states. In North Carolina, for example, I was talking to a teacher, and what begins to happen in North Carolina is that every teacher has X number of dollars, there's so much money behind every child that comes from the state. Then if the community wants to increase that, they call it a subsidy, then the local community votes and pays for that. But then what begins to happen in North Carolina, guess where, and it's an economic issue, guess where my best teachers go? They go to the community that's voted for the highest, so what begins to happen is your best teachers start migrating to those areas because that's where they want to go. So there's a lot of different systems, and if we look at ways of finding, some states include sales tax from a county level for the schools. I know Erie, Pennsylvania includes 1% of their sales tax. Well, therefore, their property tax is a little bit less than the neighboring counties. So we could get into a whole dissertation on how we fund education and stuff like that. But the study will be coming out, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to show, but that was sponsored by the School Boards Association, the superintendents in the area, to really take a look at are there greater efficiencies and economies of scale that we can create or look at in this region?
Marty, what can we do to do a better job supporting local entrepreneurs?
Well, actually, we have quite a bit underway right now. Currently, starting with Broome Community College, I understand that they will be having an entrepreneurial criteria and curriculum. The Excel program has a great program going, and we just sat through a meeting yesterday, so it's kind of fresh. SCORE, which is an organization that's SBDC, Small Business Development Center out of Binghamton University. They all have components for small business training. There's a lot of really services between the area between Broome and Tioga County. Support services for small businesses when people are interested in starting their own business. There's people who will counsel with them and get them up and running, advise them, and then they can go from there.
Sarah, if you were going to be an entrepreneur in this area, in the area of entertainments, culture, arts, that kind of thing, what would you start up? What does this area need that it maybe doesn't already have?
Wow. I would probably get in on the whole art scene with a gallery. I mean, there's such a wealth of things happening here. I mean, I mentioned art galleries have been popping up. They're theater companies, and they're all good. I mean, there's community theater. I mean, what's been done at EPAC is amazing. I mean, they've really brought that theater back. What's happening now with the Goodwill Theater in Johnson City, and the project to bring that back, it's amazing. So really, I mean, I would probably open an art gallery, I think. So.
Sarah, let me follow up on that for a second. You know, people tell me that Binghamton will never be like Ithaca, whatever that means. And it seems like from what you've been saying today and what I've been seeing around the region, Binghamton can be a lot like Ithaca, and maybe that this is just a sort of perceptual thing. Maybe we don't want to be more like Ithaca, I don't know. But it just seems like we're becoming much more of a sort of cultural, let me use the term, bohemian place. Right? It's happening. And I guess there are folks that might fight it, there are folks that might not, but what's your perception of that, and what do we do about it?
Well, first of all, I think we're a much larger market than Ithaca, which right off the bat sets us apart. We're also a lot closer to New York City and a lot of other destinations that are, you know, desirable. But, you know, I would go back for a minute to what you had said about the Prague project. Now, who did you say that was being marketed to?
55,000 upper income folks in the northeastern United States.
See, now, I would wonder, I mean, if our goal is to bring in younger people, then, you know, perhaps that kind of thing should also be marketed to younger people too who aren't upper income, you know, to let them know that there are things going on here that they can participate in as well. You know, I really think that that's the key.
Let me ask you something. Let me follow up to my follow-up, that's okay. How do you market to younger people?
Wow. Is this a direct mail that you did?
Well, don't go that way because I'm going to get in trouble, okay? It's not going to be pretty, but I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is there are all of these new things out there that young people are participating in that are marketable, and how do we get into that, I guess is my question.
Well, you let the newspaper know.
That's very self-serving of you. Just so that they even know that it's happening.
With the internet, I mean, emailing or things like that. That's what kids are.
Absolutely.
Most of they get their information.
Websites, all of that.
If I may just also mention, and I was negligent in failing to mention about the NYSEG Youth Summit. And one of the things, matter of fact, in this very room in a couple weeks, they're having their 4th or 5th annual Youth Summit. And we talk about educational opportunities, we talk about the quality of life and what there is to do around here, and we also talk about jobs and job growth. And unfortunately, from my standpoint, I wish every child could participate in that. That's one of my advocacies. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the program, we're limited to certain numbers because it's a great opportunity. But out of that discussion came the idea that we create a website, which we've now done. And we try to connect kids to the website to tell them what's going on in our communities. So when they say there's nothing going on, and the colleges, for example, BCC and BU have been very, very open when they feel the kids should be on campus during certain activities to make sure they put that on the website and the school districts, and they're picking up on some of the arts programming going on. So that's just been one initiative that came out of the Youth Summit to let them know what's going on.
May I add something to when you're talking about getting a hold of the young people? There's a whole underground communication, and it is through the internet. It happens that some of my kids are involved in music, and they send out notices through the internet about what bands are playing in local areas, and that's immediate, and that gets the word out, and that's where the young folks are going today for information. But
Yeah.
you need to use, right, but you need to use all forms of media. You need to use the radio, the television, the written word. You need to saturate the area and send them a message that we want young thinking people. You got to get out of the box and think creatively.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. We had a concert that we had very little notice for at the press. It was OAR was the band that was playing, and I personally had not heard of them, but my 18-year-old sister was out of her mind. And basically, according to the people at the box office at the Forum, they had only about a week to sell tickets, and they almost sold out the entire Forum. And it was there was not a single person in there like over 30 except me. So, you know, I mean, it can be done. It's just a question of bringing the things, and I'm sure that's like what Marty said. It's part of the internet. You know, I mean, they contact each other, and I mean, I couldn't believe it. I just stopped by to see it, and it was just huge. Tons of young people all over the place. So.
One of the things that both the Tioga and the Broome communities are both doing is concentrating on riverwalk areas, looking at getting more people to come down and enjoy those areas. But as you look around at some of these projects, which are really nice, are we missing a business component that goes with that? In other words, getting more things along those river walks and access to them that people can come down and have lunch and do a little shopping. Are they connected that way? Do we see that we're heading in the right direction in how we're using our rivers?
I was just thinking, if you're talking about last Saturday night when we had a flood on our football field, that's probably not a good idea, Candace, but that's an interesting opportunity that we do have. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we're working on a project right now on River Row in downtown Owego, and I had 4 inches of water in my basement. And so it is going to be a challenge, but anything worth doing brings up the best in you. For Tioga County, for Owego, which is a wonderful place to come and visit and have lunch, the river walk.
That was self-serving too, I think.
I got one more coming, by the way. But anyway,
that's it.
It's going to be a definite addition. It's going to be. We're going to also try to incorporate the burned-out space in the village that is on the river and turn that into a community space. So it's a wonderful, excellent opportunity to work with the stores that are already there. And yes, one supports the other. You come for lunch, you take a walk, you enjoy the whole thing, so it's a definite add to the community.
Yeah, and I don't know if Binghamton is necessarily taking as much advantage of all of our riverfront areas as we could be. As far as I can think of, there are only 2 restaurants by the river. That would be the one at the Holiday Inn and the Park Diner. That's it that I can think of. And we have tons of very scenic river areas that could be looked into.
There's a lot of work going on in the city of Binghamton and in other areas related to do you want to address that, Jim, or are you just going to nod your head? Let me just keep going while you think about what you might say. And there has been a significant investment in those areas, and I guess one way to think about this is that additional investment conceivably could come after that investment that infrastructure gets in place.
Great.
And it looks like right now there's going to be opportunities to go from the confluence pretty much to Otsiningo in the not too distant future in a reasonably pleasurable way. And if you looked at me, Mr. McAdam writes about my weight being a little bit more than my IQ. That's true, by the way. You can read it on his website. You need that. You need that exercise. Did you want to add to that, Jimmy? Jimmy is in charge of the Downtown Binghamton Business Association. Another thing.
And also a member of the Development Committee for the City of Binghamton River Trail Project. And the funding is in place. This has been documented well in the newspaper, but the funding is in place. The City of Binghamton just received their last check for $250,000, which will be for Phase 2B of the River Trail Project. But the work is commencing as we speak. That will complete the area of Confluence Park, which is already done. And there is a tunnel being built on a Memorial Bridge as part of the DOT project. And eventually, the river trail will be extended from Confluence all the way to Sherry Lindsay Park. And then the last phase will be jumping over from Sherry Lindsay up to Otsadingo Park. The River Trail Initiative is really something we're excited about in all of Greater Binghamton, and the fact that it's a quality of life issue beyond just the economic development that it may create. It's one of those goals where, and again, in a spirit of cooperation with the municipal government, this was all state and federally granted money. It's costing city residents, it's costing county residents nothing. And on the upside is a lot of the river area right now is undeveloped. And again, the hope is as we develop it, people and businesses will come. But the other side of this is we try to attract new businesses, as we try to attract BU coming to downtown Binghamton, but also our loft programs. That is something that's also very popular right now, and is a real economic vehicle. Young professionals, Doug Kamen, my good friend sitting on my left, is one of these loft renters right now and lives in downtown Binghamton. This is, again, part of our quality of life. The River Trail Initiative, it really takes a great advantage of a natural resource. People who work downtown can go there and walk and exercise. People who live in downtown can walk there and go exercise. The Confluence River is the #1 spot to take a picture during weddings now, all over all of Greater Binghamton. It's a lot of studies. But again, these are the issues that we're desperately trying to work on that, does attract young people. It brings young people to downtown. It brings young people downtown to live, and as a quality of life issue, and hopefully will spur on economic development in areas of that river trail, specifically up by Lindsay Park. And now that the developer, the owner of the Kmart Plaza on State Street is also jumping on the bandwagon saying, hey, the city's doing good things. I'm gonna have the river trail right behind me. This is an opportune time now to develop my property. And again, so a lot of these initiatives are starting to come to full cycle and fruition. We're very excited about that.
Excellent.
Cool.
Excellent.
And we should commend you and the city for the work you're doing downtown. I mean, the DBBA is doing a great job. The city's doing a great job. Let's give these guys a round of applause. They're really doing good work. Have I embarrassed you enough, Jimmy? Maybe you can stay for lunch. Where's Candace?
I'm over here. Am I on? I'm on. I have to skip out just slightly early because I did have a prior engagement today. But Patrick and everybody, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Really important discussions here, and we'll hope to see what good things come out of it.
And you'll be on tonight at 5:30, right?
5:30.
Okay. We'll watch you at 5:30. All right, what I want to do is invite anyone who has any comments from the group to think about addressing those now. And then again, for the panelists, is there anything that you want to close with or that you didn't have a chance to mention today? So we'll start with you, Marty.
Oh, gee, thank you. Just so happens, if you'll find on your table tickets to...
This is number 2, I guess.
That's okay. This is a price that you pay. This is a business show that will be held on October 7th at the Owego Treadway Inn, and we haven't touched that quite yet, so I'm going to bring it up, and that means that we do need to think regionally. If someone had asked me in 5-10 years, what are we going to see for development, I would say from Elmira to Binghamton, we are going to see development along I-86. That's what we're leaning to in Tioga County. We understand that because we are the nature and the culture that we are in our county, we need to work with those major counties on each side of us. And so I'm here to say that the economic development team, the businesses, the chamber, we are here to play and we're here to partner in every way that we can. So I invite you all to attend the business show, which will have Tioga County businesses, yes, But we will also have businesses from Elmira to Binghamton. Pass them out. They're free. Enjoy. And I look forward to seeing you there. I'm done.
Thank you. That was great. Jim?
I just wanted to kind of mention in terms of the spirit of why we're here today, and for those of you that have read the work of Philip Boyle, who's in the School of Governance at the University of North Carolina, he talks about the good life. And he really talks about 4 entities that everyone really looks for, and this is what we look for in education. One is liberty. In other words, you're free to do what you want. The second one is equity, that you're treated fairly. The third one is community, that you have a secure community and you feel connected to your community. And the last one is prosperity, that you're able to make a living, and it's usually accountability and issues of that nature. And all the officials, public officials, whether it be boards or the county, all really revolve all of their decisions around those 4 issues. And what one person may say is equity, another person might say is freedom, and another person might say, no, that's prosperity. And sometimes we don't agree on these public issues because we really don't know where people's mindset is, according to Boyle. And one of the things I want you to really understand about public education today, if I were to ask you right now what state in our particular country has the highest standards of any state in the country, I hope that everyone in this room realizes that it's New York State. I hope that you also realize that our tests, not only are kids held to the highest standards, but they're also tested. In other words, we have high-stake tests, which means kids have to take and pass 5 Regents exams in order to graduate and get a degree in New York State. So not only is it the highest standards, but it's the highest proof of evidence that we have anywhere in the country. And I share with you, my son recently, much to my dismay, moved to North Carolina. He graduated from a school at Plattsburgh in school of business. He's now managing a movie theater as his first job in North Carolina in the Raleigh area. And basically, when we went down there to visit, and I tried to convince him to come to New York as much as I possibly could, but you got to let him fly, right? I hope he comes back to New York someday. But as we went around North Carolina looking at various places to work, we walked into Chamber of Commerce, and when he said he graduated from a high school in New York State, and when he said he graduated from a college in New York State, invariably, you know what they said to him? You'll get a job down here in a second. And he went down to North Carolina without a job, and within 2 weeks he had 10 interviews, selected the job that he thought had the greatest career path for his profession. Okay, and that's kind of what's happening with education in New York State. My greatest fear is that we are preparing kids. There are great kids out there. The number of kids in our schools that went to Ivy League schools, the Harvards and the Browns and the Cornells last year from this area is absolutely astonishing. Our responsibility is to get them to come back here. And our responsibilities in the schools is to get them to think about the small businesses that they can create, and we're doing that in our schools. And we have courses on how to do that so that they can plant the seed. A couple of years ago, when our kids won the Tour de Sol, the alternative car, when they marched into Washington as a top car, and they were competing against colleges around the nation, okay? They came back to the schools. The first thing I said is, when are you going to open a business in this area? Why don't you guys get together and start a business here and look at alternative fuel sources for cars? So we're doing that, and we realize that we have an economic challenge, we have economic responsibilities in our schools in this region, and we're definitely here to partner because we're only one small aspect of that whole idea of the quality of life. Thank you.
Sarah?
I left this area for a while. I went to school in Boston, not Harvard. And I came back, and I'm really glad that I came back. I just love this area, and I've seen it grow so much in the last 5 years especially, and it's very encouraging, and I'm so glad I came to do this panel. Thank you so much, and I'm learning all kinds of new things. This is fabulous. And I really see great things happening here as far as the arts and things to offer people and things to do, and it's just very encouraging, and I'm really glad I came back. And I want to stay.
Thank you. Okay, let's give these guys a round of applause, please. All right, listen carefully to the following instructions, okay? This is what's going to happen. We are going to prepare for lunch. Lunch will be served in approximately 7.3 minutes in this room. We're going to ask you to sit with people who You know, whatever, do what you have to do. But we'd like you to sit with people who maybe you don't know so well. And we're going to, basically, it's a very simple exercise, try to get you to come up with 2 or 3 things that we think we can do to advance the agenda over the next few weeks and months. And again, we're going to be talking about specific things that are hopefully somewhat doable, taking us from the general down to the specific. So take a potty break, do what you need to do, and we'll be back at 11:30 for lunch, salads, and we've got a great feast planned for you. And then we'll get you out of here by 12:15. Thanks.